you don't understand the true opportunity of the business until you get to another plateau. I mean, you work your way up to this level and then you can see things differently. You have a different perspective, different view. And I think a lot of that applies to a lot of the AI world, because as it gets smarter, it's going to make us get smarter. And so then we'll have a different vantage point that we're viewing it from sometime in the future.
The Rational View is a weekly series hosted by me, Dr. Alan Scott, providing a rational, evidence-based perspective addressing important societal issues.
Hello, and welcome to The Rational View. I'm your host, Dr. Al Scott. On this episode, I'm going to be continuing my series on artificial intelligence, the promise and the risk. In this episode, I've got an interview for you, and I hope you'll enjoy it. We'll be talking with a futurist. And a futurist is someone who looks at the trends of today and the technologies of today and predicts what's going to be happening in the future and the impacts on people. And part of this will be, of course, artificial intelligence. Certified speaking professional, Futurist Thomas Frey continually pushes the envelope of understanding as part of the celebrity speaking circuit by creating fascinating images and understandings of the world to come. He has been fortunate enough to headline events along with some of today's most recognizable figures: Tom Peters, Nobel Peace Prize winner Mohammad Yunus, former CEO of General Electric Jack Welch, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giulliani, and former World Bank President James Wolfensohn, to name a few. As the executive director and senior futurist at DaVinci Institute, he works closely with the Institute's senior fellows and board of visionaries to develop original research studies which enables him to speak on unusual topics, translating trends into unique opportunities. Before launching the DaVinci Institute, Thomas spent 15 years at IBM as an engineer and designer, where he received over 270 awards, more than any other IBM engineer. Thomas, welcome to The Rational View.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Could you share a little of your background with our listeners? How does one end up as an artificial intelligence futurist?
Yeah, it's never a straight path. This is like the last thing I ever thought I'd be doing growing up. First of all, I didn't even know what a futurist was when I was growing up. That term was not commonly used. And being a speaking professional, I was scared to be in front of a crowd of people. I always envisioned myself being kind of in the background, but somehow I gravitated towards this. And typically, I go to 8 to 10 countries every year. Last year, though, I had my wings clipped because of COVID. So I started doing a lot more things virtually, and just like virtually everybody has to rethink the business plans, business strategies, and so it's quite a bit different. Now I've been thinking about COVID as being such a demarcation point in society. There's the pre-COVID world and there's the post-COVID world, and it's vastly different. And so you think about Hollywood pre-COVID content, pre-COVID movies and television shows, all of the things that were important to us in 2019 are suddenly it's different. In 2021, we have different motivations, different goals. Our definition of a hero and success is different. Our definition of villains and all of that is changing. And so I think we're waiting for kind of a next generation storytellers to kind of help us define the path ahead.
The world seems in flux, and I think everyone's wondering what the new normal is going to look like, or if we're stuck in this normal, and for how long.
Right. It's I'm not sure there's anything normal about it anymore. We're going to try to settle into some routines, but it's like we took all the game pieces of life and put them into a cup and shaken it up and dumped it out on the table. And now we're trying to figure out, what does this mean? Well, how's this new rule set work here that we're dealing with? it's fascinating and scary and exciting all at the same time.
Indeed. Let me focus this a little bit. I'm working right now on a series of podcasts looking at artificial intelligence. And I wanted to look at, the promise of artificial intelligence and the risk of artificial intelligence. So I've looked at, in some previous podcasts, I've looked at, what are the cool apps in artificial intelligence? What are people doing? I've done some research trying to learn about, where is artificial intelligence at? And then the question is, where is it going and what do we have to be afraid of? And, we've had warnings from Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk that one of the biggest risks to humanity is the evolution of artificial intelligence. So as your perspective as a futurist, what do you see in the near future of artificial intelligence? It seems to be invigorating a new era of industry, and everyone's feverishly trying to incorporate it into their product offerings. But what do you think is coming in the near future?
There's quite a big difference between what we're working on today, which tends to be narrow AI, and the artificial general intelligence is the one that people are concerned is going to get away from us. Mm-hmm. We interviewed this Dr. Roman Yoplansky out of University of Louisville, Kentucky, and he's working intensely on trying to save humanity. He's a very funny guy. Talk to him. He's incorporates a lot of humor in everything he says, but he's a fatalist. So I've never seen a funny fatalist before. I mean, this is different. But so near term, I think AI is going to give us the tools to do all kinds of things that we can only dream about today. Let me give you an example of a future type of gaming application that I think is going to be pretty fascinating. This is what I call the Groundhog's Day first date application. So dating apps in the future, they're going to take you through a series of maybe 25 questions, and you give all the information, and it creates an AI about your personality. It kind of intuitively begins to understand you, and so it creates half of the dating equation, so to speak. And the other people have their profiles with their AIs in it. So you could go in and simulate a first date, and you could go through it 33, 34, 35 times to get it right before you actually meet the other person. Is that something you would want to go on a first date that many times to try to get it right? For some people, that's what it might take.
Wasn't that a Black Mirror episode where they had artificial intelligences just dating each other and for specified periods of time?
There was something like that, yeah. Another one, I was playing around with this idea of fantasy football, and I think we're going to have fantasy politics in the future. It could be like a drinking game. You're sitting around a table and you say, okay, well, let's test out this kind of legislation. And then based on people's voting records and the personalities of people that are elected to office, the AI can then take people through these simulations of how this would get voted on and what this legislation would look like, and who would vote yes and who would vote no on it, and what would pass and what wouldn't. And if you change the wording on it this way or that way, does that make it more acceptable?
That's scary.
But I actually see things getting refined to that point. And so, yeah, it is scary to think that kind of our future is going to be defined by drinking games that we're playing around with AIs with.
Well, I could see companies like Google or Facebook having the sort of data that you'd need to do this sort of simulation with just about everybody who's on these platforms.
Yeah. I think it's reasonable to assume that they're close to that right now. The AI that we're working with today is still pretty crude. I mean, some would say that we're still in the Egyptian sundial stage of artificial intelligence. It's evolving quickly though, and it's learning from itself. That's the part that gets scary. One of the questions I asked the researchers in this area is that we can't. It's not possible to create any perpetual motion machines, things that just take on a life of their own and live on forever. So why are we worried about artificial general intelligence that's going to somehow figure out ways for itself to survive and continue on forever? So I'm still kind of working through some of those issues to see what the real answer is. I mean, the second law of thermodynamics says everything's going to degrade over time, and so whatever kind of artificial life form we create is probably doomed to failure somewhere along the way. I think there's lots of good stuff that we can develop in the meantime, and in a lot of businesses, you don't understand the true opportunity of the business until you get to another plateau. I mean, you work your way up to this level, and then you can see things differently. You have a different perspective, different view, and I think a lot of that applies to a lot of the AI world, because as it gets smarter, it's going to make us get smarter, and so then we'll have a different vantage point that we're viewing it from sometime in the future. Now, I'm not going to say that there's nothing to fear, nothing to worry about, because things always go wrong. I mean, we have a transhumanist crowd that believes that we're going to be able to start solving all the human problems, and we're going to be able to transition humanity to a whole new level. We have that crowd there. The other crowd thinks that the life forms are going to be good without humans. So I'm still a fan of humans. So
yeah, I'm on that side as well. I mean, it's definitely interesting to see how our artificial progeny will live on potentially without us. But I like to think that humans will be around as well.
Well, right. And there's a lot of interesting questions that come out of this. I mean, we're going to be able to advance healthcare in lots of unique and different ways. And are we going to start cloning people? Are we going to start creating designer babies? These super babies are going to grow up to be superhumans, and then we create sporting events based on superhumans competing. Are we still going to want to pay attention to superhumans competing against other superhumans? We don't know yet that for sure. And so, how does the world change when we become bigger, faster, stronger, smarter? I would aspire to become one of those guys, but I think I'm past my prime. So,
me as well. So, okay, that's interesting. You are more on the optimistic side, I guess, in terms of AI is going to help us and it's not going to destroy us, or it's not going to get away from us.
Well, not in the short term, anyway. I think we're safe for at least 10 years here, but I think during that 10 years, I think we're going to. It's going to provide us with a whole new perspective on where the true dangers are. I mean, right now, there's a lot of dangers with AI. Putting it in the hands of devious people, that's the biggest danger right now. We have a lot of people who should never have AI in their hands. It should not be part of their toolbox. The hackers, the ransomware people, the darknet crowd, you can create intimidation engines. You can create threat engines. We can blackmail people. It's not blackmailing one at a time. Suddenly you can blackmail 100,000 people in a day, and then wait for the money to roll in. Is that where we're headed? That's not something I don't want to live in that world. So it becomes something of an arms race, because you have to create the super good AI to defeat the super bad AI, and so is the good AI more powerful than the bad AI? And that becomes the plot for a whole bunch more movies coming out sometime in the future.
And this is just the AIs that work over email and over the internet that you're talking about as well. I mean, we also, people, when they think of artificial intelligence going wrong, they think of the Terminator movies or RoboCop or stuff like that. Is that something that we should be worried about as well?
It's hard to say. I mean, things are going to go wrong in ways that we never anticipated. I actually wrote a doomsday scenario about the day that Google died, talking about how hackers just came at it from every possible angle and destroyed all of the data and all of the files, including all the backup storage files along with it. And then in the end, it was just turning off the switch. And that was the day that Google died. I wrote this scenario several years ago, and we dug it out for a video recently. So it it actually seemed much more logical today that this could actually happen.
And what are the implications of such a thing happening?
Yeah, well, how dependent are you on big tech today? I mean, it doesn't have to be Google. It could be Microsoft. It could be Apple. It could be any social media company. I mean, they're developing a lot of enemies in the process, and so at the same time, we're much more knowledgeable about what all is going on, the inner workings, all the underlying weaknesses. They're kind of the choke points in every system. I mean, you can find a place where it become a key inflection point where you can just apply enough pressure and things start to fall apart. I think that's a realistic thing we should be afraid of right now. We've become so dependent on it. I mean, if the big tech just collapses right now, then suddenly, I mean, that takes down our banking systems, our money systems, and I mean, it really takes us back to the Stone Age. I mean, just take the example of a giant solar flare.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's the equivalent of an EMP blast, and so then just everything electronic gets kind of fried to the core, and so we're left with trying to rebuild society off of from a very primitive standpoint. We don't know how to think like that anymore. I don't know how to function without my phone in my hand right now. I have a calendar on there. It's keeping track of everything that's important to me in my day. But suddenly that could become meaningless.
Or suddenly the GPS constellation goes down.
Yeah, we had a solar flare like that in, was it 1859? This is the one that fried all the telegraph lines. And there's all the stories about how the telegraph operators actually burned their fingers, burned their hands with this giant solar flare, and it was actually captured through an observatory in England at the time, and so that type of thing, I mean, could happen again any minute. Just all of a sudden, everything that we've come to rely on is suddenly just gone. I mean, then we sit around and scratch our heads and think, okay, now how do we How do we provide enough food and shelter for people? How do we keep the electricity on, keep flowing? I mean, how do we keep our houses warm? How do we keep keep people employed? I mean, it becomes just a massive shift in thinking just instantly.
And civilization has become finely tuned and adapted to working with within its current environment. And you look at, big stores or big sales places like Amazon, and they don't have huge warehouses in every location. They have one central warehouse somewhere, but everywhere else they have these tiny distribution centers, and there's just very little buffer if that distribution system gets messed up for getting the products where they need to go.
Right.
I think civilization, we've become used to having our tools, and I don't know if there is sufficient emergency preparedness for a case like another Carrington event.
Yeah. I mean, just the COVID era has taught us that our supply chains are not very durable. That we've kind of muddled our way through this, but it's been really messy, and that's minor compared to what it could be. Like a Carrington event could just take it to an entirely new level. And I'm sure that the governments have gone through and created different scenario planning things that they have on some shelf somewhere. This is what we do in case this happens. I don't think they're realistic because we're evolving so quickly. I mean, if you wrote something in 2019, it doesn't apply for 2020 or 2021. I mean, every tool that we have that we're working with probably doesn't have a life expectancy of more than 10 years. Every piece of electronics that you're working with there. I mean, I've got microphones and I've got lights and I've got keyboards and computers and everything. If I'm using anything that's 10 years old, that just seems like it's prehistoric. It seems so old and outdated. And so we're constantly relying on this renewal process of new and bigger and better stuff all the time. And what happens when that stops? Mm-hmm. I think we need to work our way through those challenges. I don't think we can dwell on them, no, because we also have to do what we can in society today. So I can see all of the things that are coming down the pike. I can see all the emerging technology. Well, what we're not looking at is all of the wild card disasters that could come out of the woodwork.
So you would then favor, based on that philosophy, you would favor for artificial intelligence to push ahead with developing this as much as possible and see how it can help humanity,
right?
And learn as we go. Effectively, there's no need to put the brakes on. You're not afraid that this is going to get away from us in the near future. That we can keep up with this and build incrementally and improve the human situation. And I can see that it's got a lot of potential for positive results.
I'm not even sure that it's possible to put the brakes on. I'm not sure that. I mean, technology is moving. It's like an unstoppable force, if you will. It's got its own inertia. It's got its own momentum. It's got its own drive chain, so to speak. It's moving with or without our encouragement or without our blessing. We've created all these systems that, I don't know, we have these pots of gold out there for the true innovators. We have these, we've set up a society where this is really driving things forward. But I think we have the ability to steer it in certain directions, to focus on this problem or focus on that problem.
What do you are, as a futurist, you're aware of many trends and how things are going. What do you see as the most disruptive force in society right now or in our near future? What's your money on as a disruptive force?
the most disruptive technology in all history is going to be the driverless technology. That's going to reach out and touch the lives of every person on planet Earth over the next coming decades here. In the U.S., we have right around 40,000 deaths a year from traffic accidents. That'll be driven down to zero. But we have 4.5 million injuries a year from car accidents. That works out to right around $500 billion a year that we spend just on repairing people after car accidents. That works out to $1 out of every $6 in the healthcare industry disappears over time. Nobody's sorry to see it go, because we want to keep people alive and healthy. We don't want to have the car accidents, but it does change things. I mean, it changes the rule books of life, so to speak. But it's a big game changer. Every aspect of our lives, the tow trucks go away, road rage goes away, seatbelts go away, and just the way we travel from city to city changes dramatically when we can be active and productive. Driverless mobile businesses are going to change the way retail happens, because rather than having a retail storefront that you spend a lot of money to drive traffic to, you go to where the crowds are. If you have a driverless mobile business, every time there's a softball tournament, anytime there's a parade on Main Street, any gathering of people, you can just get your business, drive over there and set up shop and do business. It's a radically different way of thinking about things. Rather than going to an office, you can have a driverless mobile office. You want to hold a convention, you can summon 500 driverless mobile hotel rooms to show up in some remote location, and you can have an event there. You can have driverless bars and robotic bartenders, and entertainment out there. It becomes a radically new way of viewing the possibilities for the world.
That's interesting. You don't realize how pervasive a technology is until you think about what happens when it's different.
Well, yeah, the driverless technology is not just going to affect everything on the surface of the Earth. I mean, it's the driverless drones that are flying in the air. That we're going to have delivery drones. We're going to have things that float on the water that are driverless, that go under the water, that even boring things or tunneling, digging underground. We're going to, it's going to invade our lives in ways that we never anticipated.
One thing that I think we're seeing as a result of increased automation and increased artificial intelligence in the workplace is that the value of certain manual jobs has gone down, and that, you know, your repetitive labor is being replaced by robots. And I'm sure there's going to be surprising areas where AI will take over the brunt of the work. So we're seeing a change in the valuation of jobs, and people are struggling to make ends meet. And it seems like the benefits from all of this automation are being concentrated in a few people that own these robots. And there's this decoupling, I guess, as people have put it.
There's a bit of a fallacy in the way most people are looking at this. That they're viewing it from the standpoint of it's us versus them, and it's not us versus them. It's us with them. It's not us against the AI and us against the robots. It's us working with them. These things are additional tools in our toolbox. So if you think about what a person can accomplish in a lifetime today, and then think about what they can accomplish in a lifetime just even 10 years from now, it might be 10 times greater. And once we have the ability to accomplish so much more in our lives, we're going to start more businesses. We're going to start entirely new industries. And the way I'm thinking about it is we create over 100,000 new industries in the next couple decades, and these new industries are what's going to employ all the people. It is not a net zero game here. We have the opportunity to create much more than what we have today, and do it in far faster and quicker than ever before. So I get asked a lot, well, what are the jobs of the future? And I've written quite a bit about this, but all of these technologies, all these tools are going to need human support. Because we're going to have to interact with them in lots of different ways, and kind of managing relationships with people and customers and all that. It's a uniquely human talent. Can AI do that? Yeah, well, they can do some of it, but not all of it. Not yet, anyway.
A lot of these tasks that the AIs and robots are being built for are labor saving. So there's, if we have a certain level of basic needs that need to be met through producing food and distributing food and building shelter and entertainment, and these basic levels, you need less workers basically to fulfill the needs. Maybe your work week should be decreasing because of this. Why are we not seeing the benefits in that way of the automation that society has provided us?
Yeah, that's been the promise all along, is that we're going to have all this extra time on our hands when we have all this automation. We have all these devices, all these things that can do the work for us. So whatever gap we have in our the savings of time, we invent new ways to fill that really quick. It's been that way throughout history. I mean, just inventing the automobile, I mean, suddenly we can move around the globe much faster than ever before. See, in 1850, the average transportation speed in North America was roughly 4 miles an hour, roughly the speed of walking, a few people riding horses. That was basically the fastest you could go. So the average speed was around 4 miles an hour. 1900, we had a few more cars were entering the pictures. We had people riding trains. The average speed jumped up to around 8 miles an hour. And then 1950, when you get to a lot more people riding in cars, and things started speeding up quite a bit. So where the average speed jumped up, it tripled to 24 miles an hour. And in 2000, because so many people were flying, the average speed jumped up to 75 miles an hour. Now, based on that trajectory, by 2050, the average speed of humanity should be somewhere around, 235 miles an hour. And then you ask, how do we get there? Because if you look at all the metro areas, I mean, they're all congested. Traffic slows way down. But we do have the planes flying around. So we create these additional capabilities. So, I mean, if I can be in 5 cities in an hour versus 5 cities in 5 days, I mean, that's a remarkable change in my capabilities. So how do we leverage that? Just think about this, the laws of exponential capabilities, and you'll start to get your mind wrapped around where the true opportunities lie in the future.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. This has been very interesting, and a lot of cool ideas on where the future might lead. And I think it's a lot of it opens up a lot of areas for thought as to what things could change significantly. I think that's maybe the key thing that you bring to this, is that you've thought about these things, and the impacts that most of us probably wouldn't see are maybe clearer to you in terms of how day-to-day life might change, or how these things might impact us. And I'm really, I hadn't thought about the driverless cars as the biggest impact of our near future. That really is a an interesting paradigm shift. Do you have people come to you and ask for, how am I going to get ahead of the curve? What are the things you're advising people to do that will help them to stay abreast of these coming changes?
I've made this prediction: by 2030, the largest company on the internet, bigger than Apple, Google, or Facebook, is going to be an AI education company that we haven't heard of yet. Because I see that as the biggest opportunity in the online world where nobody's quite cracked the code for it. As soon as somebody figures it out, it's going to scale very quickly. So there's various industries where you can just start taking them apart. I mean, how's the food industry going to change? We're becoming a very nichified world. I mean, we're going to create digital images of ourselves. We're going to create a digital twin of our body, and we're going to know how any food that we eat is going to affect it. We'll know that in advance from past history of how that food's affected us in the past. People hate me when I say this, but I actually think the ultimate food in the future is going to be our super processed food. Not, everybody pushes towards the all natural stuff, but I mean, if you do a total scan of your body and you know what the absolute best food is, and you just mix all these ingredients together and blend it all up, that's the super processed food, and you drink it, and voila, you turn into Superman.
That sounds great. I'm on board.
Yeah, I want that.
So we're getting to the end of our time here, and I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me about the future. It's been really interesting, and I've learned quite a bit, and hopefully the listeners will take a lot from this discussion as well. So.
Yeah, if they want to learn any more about what we do, you go to futuratipodcast.com or futuristspeaker.com or DaVinci And I have a couple books out, but yeah, feel free to get in touch with me. You can get in touch with me through those websites.
Okay. And one final question for you. What's your favorite sci-fi?
The one I really like a lot was there's a movie called Next. It's a Nicolas Cage movie, and it's actually a Philip K. Dick movie. If you're familiar with Philip K. Dick, he lived in the 50s and 60s, and most of the blockbuster sci-fi movies were all written by him. So, which is pretty ironic, having lived 70 years ago. But that one, I don't know. I think it's extremely well done, and it's quite fascinating. Lots of interesting plot twists along the way.
Okay. Well, thank you again for your time, and I appreciate you coming on The Rational View.
All right. Well, thank you.
If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please consider visiting my Patreon page and becoming a patron of this podcast at patron.podbean.com/TheRationalView.